Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. Today we're going to be looking at another tag team from the Unified Mind set. This time it's going to be Rowlett&Alolan Exeggutor GX. Let's jump straight into the basic concept. And that is that we've seen grass tanking decks work before. Celesaur showed us the way in how to make an annoying, walling tag team that just infinitely sticks on the board and is frustrating for your opponent to deal with. And now that we've lost DCE through rotation, Rowlett has to really take that torch and carry it for himself to be the new best tank in the game. We know that the grass support has plenty of options with the Shaymin, Gardenia, and Life Forest, that it makes it pretty much one of the better decks just inherently at tanking. So Rowlett's going to try and take that on and use some of its new tricks up its sleeve to be even better than Celesaur in some cases. Seeing as though it can use Super Growth, we can cheat some Stage 2s into play, which is a big part of the deck. And he even has, with his own Calming Hurricane attack, a heal of 30 written on the card. So we technically have even more heal than Celesaur ever did, so that already sounds pretty appealing. Let's jump into the Pokemon, starting off with 4 copies of the main man, Rowlett&Alolan Eggs. 270 hit point grass type. It is weak to fire, obviously that's a huge drawback. But he comes with 3 attacks. Super Growth is the first one. This is why we play 4 copies of him, because we want to use Super Growth straight away, because it's really important to get our Tsareena into play so that we can use Calming Hurricane like the following turn. So Super Growth allows us to evolve up one of our grass Pokemon in play, all the way from basic all the way up to stage 2. So if it's a Bounsweet, we go straight from Bounsweet into Steenee into Tsareena, and then we can go Treecko, Gorvyle, Sceptile as well. Those are our 2 options of the deck. And we, in most matchups, want the Tsareena out so that we can use Calming Hurricane on turn 2. That's the main idea. But the Sceptile is also here with his Power of Nature, preventing all damage done to Pokemon that have any grass energies attached to them by attacks from your opponent's Ultra Beasts. So if you see Blacephalon, if you see Beast Box, we're going to try and protect our Sceptile first of all. You know, find a Treecko attached to him, and then Super Growth into that Sceptile, and then hopefully your opponent doesn't have many Ultra Beast attackers, non-Ultra Beast attackers in that deck to have answers to the Sceptile. That's the whole idea. And then we can like protect our Rowlet Egg after that fact. So that's what's going to give us reasonable Ultra Beast matchups, and one of our fire matchups is covered at least, the Blacephalon via the Sceptile. In pretty much every other matchup, you'll go the Tsareena route. Calming Hurricane is that attack that has healing involved. For 2 grass and a colours, you do 150 and heal 30. 150 is just short of being a really good number. I wish it did 160, because then you can knock out the Denes and stuff. But in general, you're a 2-hit KO merchant against tag teams, and you are knocking out every non-GX, so it's by no means poor. We also have the Tropical Hour GX attack. For 3 grass, you do 200. Now, it's very rare you'll get the extra 3 energies on, but it does force your opponent to shuffle all energy from all of their Pokemon back into their deck, so it would be hugely disruptive if ever that was the case. But usually, you just use this 200 attack to, again, gust up the Dene for an easy 2 prizes to like close out the game, or so you can knock out some 2-prize GX threats. Things like Ultra Necrozma would be a good example of that, where Calming Hurricane would have to 2-shot through it, which would be very inefficient. So Tropical Hour can come in at the right moments to take 1-hit KOs, which is nice. We play a 2-2-2 line of the Tsareena. I've seen much thicker lines of this previously, but I think you want to be a tanking deck. And if that's the case, you only really need to get one of these out in play most times and hope that your healing keeps you into 2- and 3-shot range anyway. So you'll get the Queen reward, like proccing only once or twice, but that's really all you need to get the chain of Calming Hurricanes, because, you know, only one Rowlett&Exeggutor will get knocked out during your entire game before you lose. Like, when the second one goes, you don't need any more Tsareenas, basically. So, like, you need to only prepare for one Rowlet Egg to get knocked out throughout the entire game. Otherwise, like, when the second one goes down, you've lost. So, yeah, just need a 2-2-2 line, really, for, like, prizing issues or whatever. But you can try and get the 2-2-2 out, but a lot of the time you want to keep your bench space for the Shaymins. As we've seen in Venusaur, like, it's so important to have this denial of damage, and the Shaymins really are just, like, the most important. Quick note on the Gorvyle from the Sceptile line. Obviously, Sunshine Grace is a pretty handy ability. So if you want to, or if the Gorvyle just sort of like comes to you in some certain matchups, you might just want to get him going just so that you can scout out these extra Shaymins and whatnot a little easier. So that's some nice deck thinning there as well if you want to. So the Sceptile line isn't completely useless when you're up against non-Ultra Beast decks. At least the Gorvyle can pitch in as well. Onto the trainers, we're going to play a couple copies of Pokecom. Obviously, this can help put some of our like Stage 2 lines back into our deck to search out other things. but mainly it's to give us additional outs to find Rowlet Egg if we didn't start with him, or into some of these other basics so that we can super growth. Netball is a great card for grass deck specifically, as it can help get out grass energies as well as grass basics. So again, finding that early Bounsweet, finding early Rowlet Egg is obviously very important for us, and getting grass energies into the hand so we can Viridian them away so that we can get full value from Tsareena is also an important note. We're going to play 4 copies of Custom Catcher. When you're a 2-hit KO deck, you need to play Gust, otherwise your opponent will just keep retreating around you and buying free turns to get their win condition off. So we've got to have Custom Catchers so that we can finish off things that we've been trying to 2-hit KO, which is always important. Mixed Herbs and Great Potions, 4 of both, because we are just the full-on tanking healing archetype. The Mixed Herbs coming in, removing status conditions is surprisingly helpful as well. A lot of archetypes will try and do like paralysis or confusion against you. Things like Alolan Raichu, especially using paralysis, is otherwise really annoying for you. So having lots of removals of status conditions is obviously great, as well as extra healing options. 2 Choice Helmet, reducing 30 damage that we take by GXs is obviously great. The opponent no longer has Field Blower at their disposal, so the Choice Helmet is always going to be live and always powerful for you. We have the Life Forest Prism Star. It's another way that we can get around status, as also being a very pesky stadium for the opponent by giving us extra heals on top of everything else that we're doing. And we have 3 copies of Viridian, very similar to how Malamar decks function. Tsareena the same. We want to get rid of grass energies to find more grass energies so that we can use Tsareena to get extra attachments throughout the game. And again, Viridian's just a nice searchable means of getting energy, because we play 4 copies of Bill's Analysis in this deck. It's like the most searchable means of finding energy that we have available. Also, having a pretty high count of the Viridian means that hopefully we can win the Stadium War in Life Forest late game. That's at least something we can try out. Onto the supporters. Going to play 2 copies of Gardenia. Obviously, that's a nice just heal 80 on top of all the other stuff we can do during our turn. This can really undo a lot of damage and buy us essentially a turn alone. Erika's Hospitality for some extra like deep digging into the deck, similar to how Cetasaur tried to incorporate that into the list. We're going to do the same. We have Viridian to make sure that we can like lower our hand size to make this live in a lot of situations, and we have like a good amount of insta-play item cards like our potions. We play 4 copies of Bills. He's an all-star in this deck. He's absolutely phenomenal. He gets our Custom Catchers, he gets our Mixed Herbs, he gets us future supporter cards, he gets us Viridian and like Netball and stuff in those opening turns. He really is a phenomenal card in this archetype. And then we have 4 copies of Cynthia as well, just in general, very good Shuffle Draw supporter for refreshing our hand size, which is always great. And then we just have 8 Grass Energy. I think with the Netballs as 4 additional outs and the 3 Viridians as outs, especially when you're using Bill's Analysis in a lot of situations, you'll have great odds at finding these. And once again, we rely on like 2 Rowlet eggs throughout the entire game, so 8 energy is plenty in my book. We don't need more than that. Onto the full list. So we are playing 16 Pokemon and 36 Trainers, Tools, Supported Stadiums, and 8 Grass. It's a pretty reasonable split overall. Pause now if you want to. It's always in the description as well if you want to take a look there. But there have been lots of tech options. I've really wrestled with this archetype quite a bit. I've gone back and forth. The first thing I'll talk about is having answers to fire decks. Now, we already, in air quotes, answer Blacephalon with Sceptile. And I think our matchup is still bad against Reshizard, even when we play things like Weak Guard Energy and Cherim. Cherim you'd have to play a 2-2 line of, because it's so easy for them to just do like a Custom Catcher, Gust, and then attack twice to win the game. And for Weak Guard Energy, it's a bit more like stable. Your opponent won't have answers to the Weak Guard Energy, but there are some downsides. Obviously, it's not very searchable, and we don't play a lot of conventional draw supporters in this deck. So you don't have access to the Weak Guard Energy. You end up having to play 4 copies, and that eats up a lot of space. That's basically like your Mixed Herbs immediately coming out of the list straight away, which is really ugly for you. So I'm kind of put off both of those, because I think you're already pretty weak against Reshizard anyway, so I wouldn't want to tech around it. I just think you take the loss, to be honest. I've had a look at Victory Bell as another interesting Stage 2 Pokemon. You can use that Fragrance Trap more often than Custom Catchers. Like every turn you can try and buy yourself time with Fragrance Trapping stuff and getting extra heals off on the opponent, which could be pretty cool. I remember towards like initial Cetasaur played like 4 Escape Rope and 4 Guzma just for that reason alone. So you could get like extra heal turns for free, whilst also pressurizing the bench as much as possible. So I could foresee you adding in Victory Bell for doing that sort of approach to buy yourself more heals and more time against the opponent, and force the opponent to like spend energies into things just to retreat, which can be awkward for them. So I could see you adding this into the list. The only downside is, you know, it's a stage 2, and usually you have to super grow into the Tsareena in the first place, and the Victory Bell would kind of come late game. The custom catchers are a bit more flexible, and we're already playing such a high bills count and like very limited discard options. It's only the Viridians themselves that discard cards. We'll get the use out of our custom catchers like every game, I would say. And then there's like more conventional things you could add into the deck: the Lilies, the Cherish Balls, the Dedenne. Because we have a pretty weird supporter line. The 4 Cynthia, the 4 Bill, and the 2 Erika drawing us cards isn't like the most I've seen in any deck by any means, and you could think about adding in more. Lily is a weird one. We play so many like healing cards that we want to hold on to that it feels like you don't want to use her in a lot of situations, especially with like random pieces of stage 2 lines that can end up in your hand. Cherish Ball and Dedenne I could see being reasonable. The biggest reason why I'm not playing Dedenne is, once again, an easy gust. They take 2 prizes, then they only need to knock out 1 Rowlet egg and something like 1 Shaymin to win the game. We're trying to just make them go through 2 Rowlet eggs, which is like very awkward. So you can play Cherish Ball. It can save yourself some like embarrassment of just draw pass hands and whatever by having a lot more outs to Dedenne, but overall I think it's more of a disadvantage putting it into play. Like back in the day, Celasaur never used to put down Lele's, even though it would get them out of jank hands, just because they didn't really have the ball search to supplement it in the first place, and didn't want to give your opponent that easy 2-prize knockout, so that's something to bear in mind. For a matchup overview, I'm going to say the Mewtwo Welder matchup is basically the same as a Reshizard matchup, because in my book, the Welder deck will always be playing a Reshizard, so I think those will be pretty poor for you. Ultra Necrozma, I think it's pretty bad as well. We can only knock out 1 Ultra Necrozma in 1 hit KO with our GX attack, and then from there we're 2-shotting them, which is really ugly because they can, you know, get back into the bench, do a bunch of Malamar abilities to get a bunch of energies back onto them, and simply just being 1 hit KO decks is really bad for us. Shedinja is a bad matchup. We don't have anything like Reset Stamp or anything really to make life difficult for them, so they will probably just win out there. And I've also put the Whimsicott Porygon Z build as an awkward one, much more so than the Whimsicott Welder build in my book, because their damage output will never like go away. And when we're a 2-hit KO deck at best, when they get some flipping heads in their favor, it can be like a 4 or 5 shot against a Whimsicott, and even if one does get knocked out, they have recycle energies, so they can immediately just like Porygon all those energies back into play, and their damage output never goes anywhere. Whereas the Welder build, at least, if you knock out 1 Whimsicott, maybe you get lucky, they flip tails like twice early on or whatever, then they're just sat there going like, okay, I'll Welder this turn, attach an energy, hit you for, what, 100, and then you just instantly heal that 100 the following turn. The Porygon Z build is much more like aggressive at going like, okay, here's 4 recycle energies, here's a 3 CE, here's a fairy energy, smack, and then they can build up to another knockout like even after you heal. So I think the Porygon Z build would be much more awkward, although you do have so much healing that you might be able to out-resource them, you never know. For my closing thoughts, this deck does have some glaring weaknesses. Ultra Malamar and Reshizard are not great bad matchups, but that's the same thing with Celasaur, right? Celasaur had some awkward auto losses and still managed to see a reasonable amount of play in certain tournaments. So if you want to sort of dodge and weave, you could try out this archetype and have like a good amount of freebies. My biggest concern is that low damage cap. Not being able to capitalize on things like the Dedenne really does punish you, and it makes your game slow, and you need to make sure you're healing like every single turn with the deck, to be honest. Otherwise you will be falling behind because you don't really have any catch-up mechanism with the deck. I've not thought about anything like Reset Stamp. I don't think we have enough draw power for it, although Bills can help out. I think more often than not it'll be more impactful for us just to play more healing cards than Reset Stamp, but that's just my own personal opinion. Let me know what you guys think of the Alolan Exeggutor build. Have you tried to make it more tanky? Have you tried to make it more aggressive with other grass attackers in here and just using that super growth to abuse your stage 2 into play as quickly as possible? I'll hear it all down below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in another Unified Minds deck tomorrow. Cheers.